On the olive mount. Winter, a bad guest, sitteth with me at home. Blue are my hands with his friendly handshaking. I honor him, that bad guest, but gladly leave him alone. Gladly do I run away from him. And when one runneth well, then one escapeth him. With warm feet and warm thoughts do I run where the wind is calm, to the sunny corner of mine olive mount. There do I laugh at my stern guest, and am still fond of him, because he cleareth my house of flies, and quieteth many little noises. For he suffereth it not, if a gnat wanteth to buzz, or even two of them. Also the lanes maketh he lonesome, so that the moonlight is afraid there at night. A hard guest is he, but I honor him, and do not worship him, like the tenderlings, the pot-bellied fire idol. Better even a little teeth-chattering than idle adoration, so willeth my nature. And especially have I a grudge against all ardent, steamy fire idols. Him whom I love better in winter than in summer. Better do I now mock at mine enemies, and more heartily, when winter sitteth in my house. Heartily, verily, even when I creep into bed, there still laugheth and wantoneth my hidden happiness. Even my deceptive dream laugheth. I, a creeper? Never in my life did I creep before the powerful, and if ever I lied, then did I lie out of love. Therefore am I glad even in my winter bed. A poor bed warmeth me more than a rich one, for I am jealous of my poverty, and in winter she is most faithful unto me. With a wickedness do I begin every day. I mock at the winter with a cold bath. On that account grumbleth my stern housemate. Also do I like to tickle him with a wax taper, that he may finally let the heavens emerge from ashy grey twilight. For especially wicked am I in the morning, at the early hour when the pail rattleth at the well, and horses neigh warmly in grey lanes. Impatiently do I then wait, that the clear sky may finally dawn for me, the snow-bearded winter sky, the hoary one, the white-head, the winter sky, the silent winter sky, which often stifleth even its sun. Did I perhaps learn from it the long clear silence, or did I learn it from me, or hath each of us devised it himself? Of all good things the origin is 1,000-fold. All good roguish things spring into existence for joy. How could they always do so? For once only. A good roguish thing is also the long silence, and to look, like the winter sky, out of a clear, round-eyed countenance. Like it to stifle one's sun, and one's inflexible solar will. Verily this art and this winter roguishness have I learnt well. My best loved wickedness and art is it, that my silence hath learned not to betray itself by silence. Clattering with diction and dice, I outwit the solemn assistants. All those stern watchers shall my will and purpose elude, that no one might see down into my depth and into mine ultimate will. For that purpose did I devise the long clear silence. Many a shrewd one did I find. He veiled his countenance and made his water muddy, that no one might see therethrough and thereunder. But precisely unto him came the shrewder distrusters and nutcrackers. Precisely from him did they fish his best concealed fish. But the clear, the honest, the transparent, these are for me the wisest silent ones. In them so profound is the depth that even the clearest water doth not betray it. Thou snow-bearded, silent winter sky, thou round-eyed white head above me, O thou heavenly simile of my soul and its wantonness! And must I not conceal myself like one who hath swallowed gold, lest my soul should be ripped up? Must I not wear stilts, that they may overlook my long legs, all those enviers and injurers around me? Those dingy, fire-warmed, used-up, green-tinted, ill-natured souls, how could their envy injure my happiness? Thus do I show them only the ice and winter of my peaks, and not that my mountain windeth all the solar girdles around it. They hear only the whistling of my winter storms, and know not that I also travel over warm seas, like longing, heavy, hot south winds. They commiserate also my accidents and chances. But my word saith, suffer the chance to come unto me, innocent is it as a little child. How could they injure my happiness, if I did not put around it accidents and winter privations, and bearskin caps, and enmantling snowflakes? If I did not myself commiserate their pity, the pity of those enviers and injurers, if I did not myself sigh before them, and chatter with cold, and patiently let myself be swathed in their pity. This is the wise waggish will and good will of my soul, that it concealeth not its winters and glacial storms. It concealeth not its chilblains either. To one man lonesomeness is the flight of the sick one. To another it is the flight from the sick ones. Let them hear me chattering and sighing with winter cold, all those poor squinting knaves around me. With such sighing and chattering do I flee from their heated rooms. Let them sympathize with me and sigh with me on account of my chilblains. At the ice of knowledge will he yet freeze to death, so they mourn. Meanwhile do I run with warm feet hither and thither on mine olive mount. In the sunny corner of mine olive mount do I sing, and mock at all pity. Thus sang Zarathustra. On passing by. Thus slowly wandering through many peoples and diverse cities, did Zarathustra return by roundabout roads to his mountains and his cave. And behold, thereby came he unawares also to the gate of the great city. Here, however, a foaming fool with extended hands sprang forward to him and stood in his way. It was the same fool whom the people called the ape of Zarathustra, for he had learned from him something of the expression and modulation of language, and perhaps liked also to borrow from the store of his wisdom. And the fool talked thus to Zarathustra. O Zarathustra, here is the great city, here hast thou nothing to seek and everything to lose. Why wouldst thou wade through this mire? Have pity upon thy foot, spit rather on the gate of the city, and turn back. Here is the hell for anchorites' thoughts. Here are great thoughts, seethed alive, and boiled small. Here do all great sentiments decay. Here may only rattle-boned sensations rattle. Smellest thou not already the shambles and cookshops of the spirit? Steameth not this city with the fumes of slaughtered spirit? Seest thou not the souls hanging like limp dirty rags? And they make newspapers also out of these rags. Hearest thou not how spirit hath here become a verbal game? Loathsome verbal swill doth it vomit forth, and they make newspapers also out of this verbal swill. They hound one another, and know not whither. They inflame one another, and know not why. They tinkle with their pinchbeck, they jingle with their gold. They are cold and seek warmth from distilled waters. They are inflamed and seek coolness from frozen spirits. They are all sick and sore through public opinion. All lusts and vices are here at home. But here there are also the virtuous. There is much appointed virtue. Much appointable virtue with scribe fingers and hardy sitting flesh and waiting flesh, blessed with small breast stars and padded haunchless daughters. There is here also much piety and much faithful spittle-licking and spittle-backing before the God of hosts. From on high drippeth the star, and the gracious spittle, for the high longeth every starless bosom. The moon hath its court, and the court hath its moon-calves. Unto all, however, that cometh from the court do the mendicant people pray, and all appointable mendicant virtues. I serve, thou servest, we serve, so prayeth all appointable virtue to the prince, that the merited star may at last stick on the slender breast. But the moon still revolveth around all that is earthly, so revolveth also the prince around what is earthliest of all. That, however, is the gold of the shopman. The god of the hosts of war is not the god of the golden bar, the prince proposeth, but the shopman disposeth. By all that is luminous and strong and good in thee, O Zarathustra, spit on this city of shopmen and return back. Here floweth all blood putridly and tepidly and frothily through all veins. Spit on the great city, which is the great slum where all the scum frotheth together. Spit on the city of compressed souls and slender breasts, of pointed eyes and sticky fingers, on the city of the obtrusive, the brazen-faced, the pen demagogues, and tongued demagogues, and overheated ambitious, where everything maimed, ill-famed, lustful, untrustful, over-mellow, sickly yellow, and seditious, festereth pernicious. Spit on the great city, and turn back. Here, however, did Zarathustra interrupt the foaming fool, and shut his mouth. "Stop this at once," called out Zarathustra. "Long have thy speech and thy species disgusted me. Why didst thou live so long by the swamp, that thou thyself hadst to become a frog and a toad? Floweth there not a tainted frothy swamp blood in thine own veins, when thou hast thus learned to croak and revile? Why wentest thou not into the forest, or why didst thou not till the ground? Is this sea not full of green islands? I despise thy contempt, and when thou warnedst me, why didst thou not warn thyself? Out of love alone shall my contempt and my warning bird take wing, but not out of the swamp. They call thee mine ape, thou foaming fool, but I call thee my grunting pig. By thy grunting thou spoilest even my praise of folly. What was it that first made thee grunt? Because no one sufficiently flattered thee. Therefore didst thou seat thyself beside this filth, that thou mightest have cause for much grunting, that thou mightest have cause for much vengeance. For vengeance, thou vain fool, is all thy foaming. I have divined thee well. But thy fool's word injureth me, even when thou art right. And even if Zarathustra's word were 100 times justified, thou wouldst ever do wrong with my word. Thus spake Zarathustra. Then did he look on the great city and sighed, and was long silent. At last he spake thus: I loathe also this great city, and not only this fool. Here and there is nothing to better, nothing to worsen. Woe to this great city, and I would that I already saw the pillar of fire in which it will be consumed. For such pillars of fire must precede the great noontide. But this hath its time and its own fate. This precept, however, give I unto thee, in parting, thou fool: where one can no longer love, there should one pass by. Thus spake Zarathustra, and passed by the fool and the great city. The apostates. Ah, lieth everything already withered and grey, which but lately stood green and many-hued on this meadow? And how much honey of hope did I carry hence into my beehives? Those young hearts have already all become old, and not old even, only weary, ordinary, comfortable. They declare it. We have again become pious. Of late did I see them run forth at early morn with valorous steps, but the feet of their knowledge became weary, and now do they malign even their morning valor. Verily, many of them once lifted their legs like the dancer. To them winked the laughter of my wisdom. Then did they bethink themselves. Just now have I seen them bent down to creep to the cross. Around light and liberty did they once flutter like gnats and young poets, a little older, a little colder, and already they are mystifiers and mumblers and mollycoddles. Did perhaps their hearts despond, because lonesomeness had swallowed me like a whale? Did their ear perhaps hearken yearningly long for me in vain, and for my trumpet notes and herald calls? Ah, ever are there but few of those whose hearts have persistent courage and exuberance, and in such remaineth also the spirit patient. The rest, however, are cowardly. The rest, these are always the great majority, the commonplace, the superfluous, the far too many. Those all are cowardly. Him who is of my type will also the experiences of my type meet on the way, so that his first companions must be corpses and buffoons. His second companions, however, they will call themselves his believers. will be a living host, with much love, much folly, much unbearded veneration. To those believers shall he who is of my type among men not bind his heart. In those springtimes and many-hued meadows shall he not believe, who knoweth the fickly faint-hearted human species. Could they do otherwise, then would they also will otherwise. The half and half spoil every whole. That leaves become withered, what is there to lament about that? Let them go and fall away, O Zarathustra, and do not lament. Better even to blow amongst them with rustling winds. Blow amongst those leaves, O Zarathustra, that everything withered may run away from thee the faster. We have again become pious. So do those apostates confess, and some of them are still too pusillanimous thus to confess. Unto them I look into the eye, before them I say it unto their face and unto the blush on their cheeks. Ye are those who again pray. It is, however, a shame to pray, not for all, but for thee, and me, and whoever hath his conscience in his head. For thee it is a shame to pray. Thou knowest it well, the faint-hearted devil in thee, which would fain fold its arms, and place its hands in its bosom, and take it easier. This faint-hearted devil persuadeth thee that there is a God. Thereby, however, dost thou belong to the light-dreading type, to whom light never permitteth repose. Now must thou daily thrust thy head deeper into obscurity and vapour. And verily thou choosest the hour well, for just now do the nocturnal birds again fly abroad. The hour hath come for all light-dreading people, the vesper hour and leisure hour, when they do not take leisure. I hear it well and smell it. It hath come, their hour for hunt and procession, not indeed for a wild hunt, but for a tame, lame, snuffling, soft treaders, soft prayers hunt, for a hunt after susceptible simpletons. All mouse-traps for the heart have again been set, and whenever I lift a curtain, a night-moth rusheth out of it. Did it perhaps squat there along with another night-moth? For everywhere do I smell small concealed communities, and wherever there are closets there are new devotees therein, and the atmosphere of devotees. They sit for long evenings beside one another, and say, let us again become like little children, and say, good God, ruined in mouths and stomachs by the pious confectioners. Or they look for long evenings at a crafty lurking cross-spider, that preacheth prudence to the spiders themselves, and teacheth that under crosses it is good for cobweb spinning. Or they sit all day at swamps with ankle rods, and on that account think themselves profound. But whoever fisheth where there are no fish, I do not even call him superficial. Or they learn in godly gay style to play the harp with a hymn-poet, who would fain harp himself into the heart of young girls, for he hath tired of old girls and their praises. Or they learn to shudder with a learned semi-madcap, who waiteth in darkened rooms for spirits to come to him, and the spirit runneth away entirely. Or they listen to an old roving howl and growl piper, who hath learnt from the sad winds the sadness of sounds. Now pipeth he as the wind, and preacheth sadness in sad strains. And some of them have even become night watchmen. They know now how to blow horns, and go about at night, and awaken old things which have long fallen asleep. 5 words about old things did I hear yesternight at the garden wall. They came from such old sorrowful arid night watchmen. For a father he careth not sufficiently for his children. Human fathers do this better. He is too old, he now careth no more for his children, answered the other night watchman. Hath he then children? No one can prove it unless he himself prove it. I have long wished that he would for once prove it thoroughly. Prove? As if he had ever proved anything. Proving is difficult to him. He layeth great stress on one's believing him. Ay, believe. Belief saveth him. Belief in him. That is the way with old people. So it is with us also. Thus spake to each other the 2 old night watchmen and light-scarers. and tooted thereupon sorrowfully on their horns. So did it happen yesternight at the garden wall. To me, however, did the heart writhe with laughter, and was like to break. It knew not where to go, and sunk into the midriff. Verily, it will be my death yet, to choke with laughter when I see asses drunken, and hear night watchmen thus doubt about God. Hath the time not long since passed for all such doubts? Who may nowadays awaken such old slumbering, light-shunning things? With the old deities hath it long since come to an end, and verily a good joyful deity end had they. They did not begloom themselves to death, that do people fabricate. On the contrary, they laughed themselves to death once on a time. That took place when the ungodliest utterance came from a god himself. The utterance, "There is but one God. Thou shalt have no other gods before me." An old grim beard of a god, a jealous one, forgot himself in such wise. And all the gods then laughed, and shook upon their thrones, and exclaimed, "Is it not just divinity that there are gods, but no God? He that hath an ear, let him hear." Thus talked Zarathustra in the city he loved, which is surnamed the Pied Cow. For from here he had but 2 days to travel to reach once more his cave and his animals. His soul, however, rejoiced unceasingly on account of the nighness of his return home. The return home. O lonesomeness, my home, lonesomeness! Too long have I lived wildly in wild remoteness, to return to thee without tears. Now threaten me with the finger as mothers threaten. Now smile upon me as mothers smile. Now say just, who was it that like a whirlwind once rushed away from me? Who when departing called out, "Too long have I sat with lonesomeness, there have I unlearned silence." That hast now learned now, surely? O Zarathustra, everything do I know, and that thou wert more forsaken amongst the many, thou unique one, than thou ever wert with me. One thing is forsakenness, another matter is lonesomeness. That hast thou now learned, and that amongst men thou wilt ever be wild and strange even when they love thee, for above all they want to be treated indulgently. Here, however, art thou at home and house with thyself. Here canst thou utter everything, and unbosom all motives. Nothing is here ashamed of congealed feelings. Here do all things come caressingly to thy talk and flatter thee, for they want to ride upon thy back. On every simile dost thou here ride to every truth. Uprightly and openly mayest thou here talk to all things, and verily it soundeth as praise in their ears. For one to talk to all things directly. Another matter, however, is forsakenness. For dost thou remember, O Zarathustra, when thy birds screamed overhead, when thou stoodest in the forest, irresolute, ignorant where to go, beside a corpse? When thou spakest, "Let mine animals lead me," more dangerous have I found it among men than among animals. That was forsakenness. And dost thou remember, O Zarathustra, when thou sattest in thine isle, a well of wine, giving and granting amongst empty buckets, bestowing and distributing among the thirsty, until at last thou alone sattest thirsty amongst the drunken ones, and wailedst nightly, "Is taking not more blessed than giving, and stealing yet more blessed than taking?" That was forsakenness. O dost thou remember, O Zarathustra, when thy stillest hour came and drove thee forth from thyself, when with wicked whispering it said, "Speak and succumb," when it disgusted thee with all thy waiting and silence, and discouraged thy humble courage? That was forsakenness. O lonesomeness, my home, lonesomeness, how blessedly and tenderly speaketh thy voice unto me. We do not question each other, we do not complain to each other, we go together openly through open doors. For all is open with thee and clear, and even the hours run here on lighter feet. For in the dark time weigheth heavier upon one than in the light. Here fly open unto me all beings' words and word cabinets, Here all being wanteth to become words. Here all becoming wanteth to learn of me how to talk. Down here, however, all talking is in vain. There, forgetting and passing by are the best wisdom. That I have learned now. He who would understand everything in man must handle everything. But for that I have 2 clean hands. I do not like even to inhale their breath. Alas, that I have lived so long among their noise and bad breaths. O blessed stillness around me, O pure odours around me, how from a deep breast this stillness fetcheth pure breath, how it hearkeneth, this blessed stillness. But down there speaketh everything, there is everything misheard. If one announce one's wisdom with bells, the shopmen in the marketplace will outjingle it with pennies. Everything among them talketh, no one knoweth any longer how to understand. Everything falleth into the water, nothing falleth any longer into deep wells. Everything among them talketh, nothing succeedeth any longer and accomplisheth itself. Everything cackleth, but who will still sit quietly on the nest and hatch eggs? Everything among them talketh, everything is out-talked, and that which yesterday was still too hard for time itself and its tooth, hangeth today, out-champed and out-chewed, from the mouths of the men of today. Everything among them talketh, everything is betrayed, and what was once called the secret and secrecy of profound souls belongeth today to the street trumpeters and other butterflies. O human hubbub, thou wonderful thing, thou noise in dark streets, now art thou again behind me. My greatest danger lieth behind me. In indulging and pitying lay ever my greatest danger, and all human hubbub wisheth to be indulged and tolerated. With suppressed truths, with fool's hand and befooled heart, and rich in petty lies of pity, thus have I ever lived among men. Disguised did I sit amongst them, ready to misjudge myself that I might injure them, and willingly saying to myself, Thou fool, thou dost not know men. One unlearneth men when one liveth amongst them. There is too much foreground in all men. What can far-seeing, far-longing eyes do there? And fool that I was! When they misjudged me, I indulged them on that account more than myself, being habitually hard on myself, and often even taking revenge on myself for the indulgence. Stung all over by poisonous flies, and hollowed like the stone by many drops of wickedness, thus did I sit among them, and still said to myself, Innocent is everything petty of its pettiness. Especially did I find those who called themselves the good, the most poisonous flies. They sting in all innocence, they lie in all innocence. How could they be just towards me? He who liveth amongst the good, pity teacheth him to lie. Pity maketh stifling air for all free souls. For the stupidity of the good is unfathomable. To conceal myself and my riches, that did I learn down there. For every one did I still find poor in spirit. It was the lie of my pity, that I knew in every one, that I saw and scented in every one, what was enough of spirit for him, and what was too much. They're stiff wise men, I call them wise, not stiff, thus did I learn to slur over words. The grave diggers dig for themselves diseases, under old rubbish rest bad vapours. One should not stir up the marsh, one should live on mountains. With blessed nostrils do I again breathe mountain freedom. Freed at last is my nose from the smell of all human hubbub. With sharp breezes tickled, as with sparkling wine, sneezeth my soul, sneezeth and shouteth self-congratulatingly, Health to thee! Thus spake Zarathustra. The 3 evil things. In my dream, in my last morning dream, I stood today on a promontory. Beyond the world I held a pair of scales, and weighed the world. Alas, that the rosy dawn came too early to me. She glowed me awake, the jealous one. jealous is she always of the glows of my morning dream. Measurable by him who hath time, weighable by a good weigher, attainable by strong pinions, divinable by divine nutcrackers, thus did my dream find the world. My dream, a bold sailor, half ship, half hurricane, silent as the butterfly, impatient as the falcon. How had it the patience and leisure to-day for world-weighing? Did my wisdom perhaps speak secretly to it, my laughing, wide-awake day-wisdom, which mocketh at all infinite worlds? For it saith, where force is, there becometh number the master. It hath more force. How confidently did my dream contemplate this finite world, not new-fangledly, not old-fangledly, not timidly, not entreatingly, as if a big round apple presented itself to my hand, a ripe golden apple, with a coolly soft velvety skin. Thus did the world present itself unto me, as if a tree nodded unto me, a broad-branched, strong-willed tree, curved as a recline and a footstool for weary travellers. Thus did the world stand on my promontory, as if delicate hands carried a casket towards me, a casket open for the delectation of modest adoring eyes. Thus did the world present itself before me to-day. Not riddle enough to scare human love from it, not solution enough to put to sleep human wisdom. A humanly good thing was the world to me to-day, of which such bad things are said. How I thank my morning dream that I thus at to-day's dawn weighed the world. As a humanly good thing did it come unto me, this dream and heart comforter, and that I may do the like by day, and imitate and copy its best. Now will I put the 3 worst things on the scales, and weigh them humanly well. He who taught to bless taught also to curse. What are the 3 best cursed things in the world? These will I put on the scales: voluptuousness, passion for power, and selfishness. These 3 things have hitherto been best cursed, and have been in worst and falsest repute. These 3 things will I weigh humanly well. Well, here is my promontory, and there is the sea. It rolleth hither unto me, shaggily and fawningly, the old faithful 100-headed dog monster that I love. Well, here will I hold the scales over the weltering sea, and also a witness do I choose to look on, thee, the anchorite tree, thee, the strong-odored, broad-arched tree that I love. On what bridge goeth the now to the hereafter? By what constraint doth the high stoop to the low? And what enjoineth even the highest still to grow upwards? Now stand the scales poised and at rest. 3 heavy questions have I thrown in, 3 heavy answers carrieth the other scale. Voluptuousness, unto all hair-shirted despisers of the body, a sting and stake and cursed as the world by all backworlds men, for it mocketh and befooleth all erring, misinferring teachers. Voluptuousness, to the rabble, the slow fire at which it is burnt, to all wormy wood, to all stinking rags, the prepared heat and stew furnace. Voluptuousness, to free hearts, a thing innocent and free, the garden happiness of the world, all the future's thanks overflow to the present. Voluptuousness, only to the withered a sweet poison, to the lion-willed, however, the great cordial, and the reverently saved wine of wines. Voluptuousness, the great symbolic happiness of a higher happiness and highest hope. For to many is marriage promised, and more than marriage, to many that are more unknown to each other than man and woman, and who hath fully understood how unknown to each other are man and woman. Voluptuousness, but I will have hedges around my thoughts, and even around my words, lest swine and libertine should break into my gardens. Passion for power, the glowing scourge of the hardest of the heart-hard, the cruel torture reserved for the cruelest themselves, the gloomy flame of living pyres. Passion for power, the wicked gadfly which is mounted on the vainest peoples, the scorner of all uncertain virtue, which rideth on every horse and on every pride. Passion for power, the earthquake which breaketh and upbreaketh all that is rotten and hollow, the rolling, rumbling, punitive demolisher of whited sepulchres, the flashing interrogative sign beside premature answers. Passion for power, before whose glance man creepeth and croucheth and drudgeth, and becometh lower than the serpent and the swine, until at last great contempt crieth out of him. Passion for power, the terrible teacher of great contempt, which preacheth to their face to cities and empires, away with thee, until a voice crieth out of themselves, away with me. Passion for power, which, however, mounteth alluringly even to the pure and lonesome, and up to the self-satisfied elevations, glowing like a love that painteth purple felicities alluringly on earthly heavens. Passion for power, but who would call it passion, when the height longeth to stoop for power? Verily, nothing sick or diseased is there in such longing and descending, that the lonesome height may not forever remain lonesome and self-sufficing, that the mountains may come to the valleys, and the winds of the heights to the plains. Oh, who could find the right praenomen and honoring name for such longing, bestowing virtue? Thus did Zarathustra once name the unnameable. And then it happened also, and verily it happened for the first time, that this word blessed selfishness, the wholesome healthy selfishness that springeth from the powerful soul, to which the high body appertaineth, the handsome, triumphing, refreshing body, around which everything becometh a mirror, the pliant persuasive body, the dancer, whose symbol and epitome is the self-enjoying soul. Of such bodies and souls the self-enjoyment calleth itself virtue. With its words of good and bad doth such enjoyment shelter itself as with sacred groves. With the names of its happiness doth it banish from itself everything contemptible. Away from itself doth it banish everything cowardly. It saith, bad, that is cowardly. Contemptible seem to it the ever solicitous, the sighing, the complaining, and whoever pick up the most trifling advantage. It despiseth also all bitter-sweet wisdom, for verily there is also wisdom that bloometh in the dark, a nightshade wisdom, which ever sigheth, all is vain. Shy distrust is regarded by it as base, and every one who wanteth oaths instead of looks and hands, also all over distrustful wisdom, for such is the mode of cowardly souls. Baser still it regardeth the obsequious, doggish one, who immediately lieth on his back, the submissive one, and there is also wisdom that is submissive, and doggish, and pious, and obsequious. Hateful to it altogether, and a loathing, is he who will never defend himself, he who swalloweth down poisonous spittle and bad looks, the all too patient one, the all endurer, the all satisfied one, for that is the mode of slaves, whether they be servile before gods and divine spurnings, or before men and stupid human opinions. At all kinds of slaves doth it spit, this blessed selfishness. Bad, thus doth it call all that is spirit-broken, and sordidly servile, constrained blinking eyes, depressed hearts, and the false submissive style, which kisseth with broad cowardly lips. And spurious wisdom, so doth it call all the wit that slaves and hoary-headed and weary ones affect, and especially all the cunning, spurious-witted, curious-witted foolishness of priests. The spurious wise, however, all the priests, the world-weary, and those whose souls are of feminine and servile nature, oh, hath their game all along abused selfishness. And precisely that was to be virtue, and was to be called virtue, to abuse selfishness. And selfless, so did they wish themselves, with good reason, all those world-weary cowards and cross-spiders. But to all those cometh now the day, the change, the sword of judgment, the great noontide. Then shall many things be revealed. He who proclaimeth the ego wholesome and holy, and selfishness blessed, Verily he, the prognosticator, speaketh also what he knoweth. Behold, it cometh, it is nigh, the great noontide. Thus spake Zarathustra.